Empty the register or I swear I'll paint this plexiglass red. The gun barrel pressed against the scratched plastic window, inches from Maria's face. The graveyard shift clerk froze, hands hovering over the worn keys of the register. It was 1:37 a.m., the grave hour when the highway went quiet and only truckers and ghosts stopped for gas. Her name tag trembled against her blue polo as the masked man leaned closer, breath fogging the barrier. In aisle 3, pretending to read the back of a bag of beef jerky, the customer stopped breathing. Jake Mercer's fingers tightened around the metal basket in his hand. He heard the quiver in Maria's voice, the panic in the robbers. He heard everything. You don't do 15 years of SWAT without your brain recording every sound. At his side, a scruffy brown mutt lay obediently in the shadow of the chip rack. Rusty's ears pricked up, honey-colored eyes snapping toward the front counter. He'd gone from abandoned shelter dog to Jake's partner in less than a year, but his instincts were older than that, street instincts. The kind you earn by surviving. Sir, please, Maria whispered. There's only about 200 in the drawer. It's been slow. My boss. I don't care about your boss, the robber snapped, voice cracking. The gun shook. Open it. Jake saw the man's reflection in the cooler door glass. Black hoodie, cheap plastic mask, shaky stance. Not a pro. That made him more dangerous, not less. His trigger finger twitched like it belonged to someone else. Jake's heart pounded in his ears, suddenly overlapping with another sound from another night, crying, sirens, the echo of a shot he'd been half a second too late to stop. Not again. He set the basket down quietly and shifted his weight, measuring the distance. 12 steps to the counter. A clear lane between the coffee stand and the lottery ticket display. The problem was the angle. If the guy flinched, that muzzle might cut sideways straight into Maria's chest. Rusty's lip curled in a silent growl. Jake nudged him gently with his calf. Stay, he breathed, barely moving his lips. The robber slammed his free hand against the plexiglass. Maria jumped and fumbled with the register, tears starting to spill. A photo of a little boy in a baseball uniform stared up at Jake from the counter near the lottery machine. Her grandson. He remembered her telling him last week how she worked this shift so his mother could sleep before her own job at the hospital. He watched the robber's shoulders, the rise and fall of panicked breath. You're making this worse, man, Jake thought. Just walk out. Drop the gun and walk out. But life never listened. The drawer popped open with a ding that sounded stupidly cheerful. Maria grabbed the bills with shaking fingers. Put it in a bag. Now, the man ordered. Jake stepped out from behind the aisle, slow, calculated. Hey man, he said calmly, hands raised. Let's not freak out here, okay? The robber jerked, surprised. He hadn't realized there was anyone else left in the store. Back off, he barked, swinging the gun halfway toward Jake. Jake froze, palms open. Okay. I'm backing off. Just, you don't want to do something you can't take back. The man's hand trembled harder. Shut up. You don't know what I want. Rusty shifted, a low rumble in his chest. The robber's eyes snapped toward the sound. What was that? He stepped to the side, trying to see down the aisle, the gun barrel following his gaze, starting to swing directly toward the crouched brown mutt in the shadows. And Jake realized in one icy flash he might have to choose between the clerk and the dog. Jake's stomach dropped. For a second, the humming coolers, the buzz of fluorescent lights, the smell of burnt coffee, all of it vanished. Only the black eye of the pistol existed, drifting toward Rusty. Easy, Jake said, voice flattening into the careful calm he used on barricaded suspects. It's just my dog, man. He's scared. That's all. Shut him up, the robber yelled. His mask shifted as his jaw clenched. I hate dogs. Of course you do, Jake thought bitterly. Rusty's growl deepened as the gun pointed closer, but he didn't move. Shelter life had taught him to freeze when humans screamed. Jake had spent months teaching him the opposite. Tonight he prayed the old fear won. I'll get him, Jake said. I'll grab his collar and we'll leave. You can walk out with the money, nobody has to get hurt. He took one step forward. Another step and I swear, the robber dragged the gun back toward Maria, shoving it against the plexiglass again. The barrel squeaked across the surface, leaving a greasy line. Jake's jaw clenched. If the guy fired, that cheap plastic wouldn't stop the round. Maria flinched backward anyway, colliding with the cigarette display. You got a name? Jake asked, trying to buy seconds. Look, buddy, whatever hole you're in, this isn't your way out. The man laughed harshly. My hole is a landlord about to throw my mom on the street and a boss who cut my hours. You think anyone cares if I follow the rules? The words slammed into Jake. Different story, same rage. He saw the victim again, the young father from the botched raid, shouting about bills and overtime and nobody listening until it was too late. Jake's therapist called it moral injury. It felt more like a crack in his soul. "You're right," Jake said quietly. "A lot of people don't care. But I do. And I promise you, pointing that gun at her? That's the fastest way to make sure nobody listens to you for the rest of your life." Rusty whined softly, sensing his handler's turmoil. A bell chimed as the gas station door opened. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the smell of diesel and wet asphalt. A skinny teenage boy in a hoodie stepped inside, earbuds in, staring at his phone. Jake's blood turned to ice. "Kid, back out," he said sharply. "Now." The boy looked up, confused, then froze as he saw the gun. Oh my God." "Lock the door," the robber screamed, spinning toward the entrance. "Lock it." The gun swept dangerously past Jake's chest as the robber lunged. The teen fumbled with the lock, hands shaking too hard to twist it. Jake saw his opening, weight on the robber's front foot, arm extended, line of sight broken for a heartbeat. "This is it." He shifted, ready to explode forward, to slam the arm up in a way like he'd done 1,000 times in training. But the robber suddenly grabbed the teen by the hoodie, yanking him close, pressing the gun to the side of the kid's head. "One move and I'll kill him," he shrieked. Maria screamed. Rusty barked, sharp and frantic. Jake froze mid-step, heart slamming so hard he thought his ribs would crack. The kid's wide eyes met his, glossy with terror. Jake raised his hands higher, voice dropping to a hoarse whisper. "Don't do this." The robber's finger tightened on the trigger. And somewhere outside, faint but unmistakable, a police siren began to wail toward the station. If you want to know how this story ends, subscribe to the channel and don't miss the next chapters. Things are only just starting to explode for Jake, Rusty, and everyone trapped in that gas station. The siren sliced through the night like a promise and a threat. The robber's head snapped toward the door, mask shifting. "You called the cops?" he yelled at Maria. She shook her head violently, sobbing. I swear I didn't touch anything." Jake's mind raced. The station had a silent alarm under the counter. She could have hit it without realizing. Or a driver had seen the gun through the window. Either way, backup was rolling in, and with it, a whole new set of risks. A panicked gunman plus flashing lights often equaled a dead hostage. "You're running out of time," Jake said. "Let the kid go and walk out with the money now. Things can still end with you alive." "You think I'm stupid?" The robber dragged the teen closer, using him as a shield. "They see a gun, they'll shoot me on sight." "That's not wrong," Jake thought grimly. "Not with your nerves shredded and that finger twitching like that." Rusty crept a step forward, body low, tail stiff. His eyes never left the robber's wrist. He could feel Jake's tension through the air like static. "Rusty down," Jake murmured. The dog dropped flat, muscles quivering. The siren grew louder, then cut off as the squad car rolled to a stop outside. Blue and red lights painted the store in violent colors, throwing crazy shadows across Maria's terrified face. "Everybody down," came a muffled shout through a loudspeaker. "This is the police." The robber flinched. "They're not coming in here," he snarled. "They come in, he dies first." He jostled the teen, who whimpered. Jake swallowed the acid taste in his mouth. The local patrol guys were good men, but this wasn't their kind of scene. This was textbook SWAT. Except tonight, their SWAT officer was standing inside the store, pretending to be just another guy in jeans and a work jacket. And the masked robber had no idea. "Listen to me," Jake said, locking eyes with the gunman. "If you hurt anybody, every cop out there will treat this like a war zone. You let them walk out the door, you still have options. I can help you talk to them. I know how this goes." "How do you know?" the robber demanded. Images flashed in Jake's mind, stacking up on doors, flashbangs, broken glass, suspects screaming, kids crying, his own voice hoarse from shouting commands. The dead father on the floor, his own hands covered in someone else's blood. "I just do," Jake said softly. The robber hesitated, confusion flickering in his eyes behind the mask. Maria sniffled, staring at Jake like she was seeing him for the first time. Rusty lifted his head an inch, sensing the shift. Then a cell phone buzzed. The sound came from the robber's pocket. He cursed, struggling one-handed to dig it out while still clutching the teen and the gun. The screen lit his mask with a ghostly glow. A name flashed. Maria gasped. "Eddie?" The robber froze. "What did you call me?" "Eddie," she whispered. "My tenant Eddie. From the trailer 2 streets over." I recognize your voice." Jake's eyes narrowed. "Tenant. Landlord. Eviction." So the man threatening her was the same one who'd been sliding overdue notices under her door. The siren outside started again, shorter this time, a code pattern, a signal to other units. Jake read it automatically. They were setting up a perimeter. Inside, Maria stared at the masked robber who'd been in her store 100 times before, buying beer and lotto tickets, complaining about life. "You know me," she said, voice breaking. "You've seen my grandson in that picture. How can you point a gun at me?" "Shut up," Eddie yelled, but his voice shook. Jake watched the crack form in his resolve, thin but real. A human connection. A past. Something to grab onto. He took a slow breath, ready to push, to leverage that hesitation. When Rusty's ears shot up again, head whipping toward the back of the store. From the rear exit, barely audible over the blare of police outside, came the click of a lock. Someone else was coming in. The back door latch clicked again, louder this time. Rusty's head snapped toward the rear hallway, nose flaring. Jake felt the dog's body tense like a coiled spring. Eddie heard it too. "What was that?" he barked. "Probably the ice machine," Jake said quickly. "They kick on all the—" The metal crash bar thunked and the rear door eased open an inch, letting in a strip of cold night and flashing blue. A silhouette edged into view. Uniform, duty belt, ball cap. A young patrol officer, pistol drawn in a two-handed grip, trying to sneak a flank. Jake's blood turned to sludge. No, no, no. From Eddie's angle he couldn't see the cop yet, but one more step and he would. And a rookie seeing a gun on a hostage-taker rarely reacted with poetry. "Hey!" Eddie snarled, jerking Jake's focus back as he tightened his grip on the teen. "You look at me when I'm talking." Jake raised his hands higher, keeping his eyes on Eddie's gun, but his voice rolled toward the back of the store, firm and sharp. "Everybody needs to stop moving. Right now." The young officer froze in the doorway, startled by the authority in Jake's tone. His gaze flicked to Jake's stance, to the way his hands were up but his feet were set. Something about it pinged training. Jake didn't dare look directly. He projected his words instead, like he was talking to Eddie alone. "You fire that gun in here, you're putting holes in these people and in those cops' careers," he said. "Nobody wants that. Do they?" He put a tiny stress on they. Behind Eddie's back, the patrolman's lips parted. Recognition stirred. Jake used an old call sign, low and fast. "Unit at the rear, hold," he said. "Do not enter." "Say again, do not enter." Eddie squinted. "Who are you, man? You talk like you're one of them." Jake forced a shrug. "Security. I used to do nightclubs. That's it. I've just seen this go bad before." The rear officer eased back a step, disappearing into shadow. Jake saw a faint reflection of him in the cooler door glass, radio at his shoulder. Good. The message would travel. Outside, more tires screeched on asphalt. Another engine. A heavier one. "They're calling out the tactical truck," Jake realized. His world. Eddie's gaze darted to the front windows, to the dance of red and blue outside. He was sweating now, hoodie sticking to his neck. His gun hand shook so much the muzzle vibrated against the teen's temple. "This wasn't supposed to go like this," he muttered. Jake seized on the crack. "Then change it," he said. "Right now. You can still walk out of here without a body on your conscience." Eddie's eyes narrowed at him. "You're too calm. Nobody's this calm. Let me see your phone." Jake's stomach dipped. "I don't." "Wallet too." Eddie snapped. "Kick him over. No. Or the kid gets it." Jake slowly pulled his wallet and cell from his pocket, setting them on the floor with two soft thuds. Rusty's eyes tracked them, then flicked to Jake, waiting. "Kick him," Eddie ordered. Jake slid them forward with his boot. Eddie kept the teen pinned with one arm, then bent just enough to nudge the items closer with his shoe, dragging them until he could snag the wallet. He flipped it open with clumsy fingers. A small, worn leather badge case unfolded, catching the harsh fluorescent light. Eddie stared. "SWAT," he read aloud in a hoarse whisper. "You're a cop." His head snapped up, eyes blazing, gun jerking fully toward Jake's chest as the teen tore free. "You set me up." Eddie screamed, finger whitening on the trigger. Anne-Maria realized, with a horror that stole her breath, that the only man standing between them and a bullet was the very cop her masked tenant now wanted to kill. The barrel centered on Jake's sternum. 10 feet. Little room for miracles. "Eddie, look at me," Jake said, forcing his voice steady. "Yeah, I'm a cop. But I'm also the only person in this building who knows how to walk you out of here alive. You shoot me, that chance dies with me." "Shut up." Eddie's whole body shook. "You were in here the whole time just watching? Waiting for backup so you could play hero?" Jake thought of the snack basket he'd abandoned, the cheap coffee, the casual nod to Maria on his way in, just another off-duty guy on the night shift. He hadn't even told his own unit he was stopping here. Backup came because you waved a gun in a grandmother's face, Jake said. Not because of me. Maria flinched at grandmother. Eddie's gaze flicked to her, to the photo by the lotto display. For a heartbeat his eyes softened. Then more engines rumbled outside, heavy and purposeful. The silhouette of a large armored vehicle rolled into view through the front windows. Bold white letters on the side, Sheriff. Eddie's breath hitched. They brought the damn tank. They brought my team, Jake corrected quietly. The words hung there. Maria whispered, "You're SWAT." Jake didn't look at her, didn't dare break eye contact with the muzzle. "Yes, ma'am." "You lied," Eddie said. "Security, huh?" "I didn't owe you my resume while you were shoving a gun at her head," Jake replied. "But you knowing who I am doesn't have to be a bad thing." Eddie laughed, high and broken. "Oh yeah? The sniper out there hearing SWAT down inside is definitely gonna chill out. They're not going to shoot if you don't give them a reason." Jake nodded toward the front. "Look at the angle. They can't see your hands right now. Put the gun down on the counter and we all walk out." "No." Eddie barked. "You're gonna talk to them. Right now. Tell them I got you. Tell them if they rush the door, I kill you first." He gestured with the gun toward the counter phone. "Call." Jake didn't move. Rusty whined, picking up the spike of adrenaline. "Eddie, think. You start using a cop as a human shield, your charges go to a whole different planet. You're talking life without parole." "What part of my mom's getting thrown out Thursday sounds like I was planning to live long anyway?" Eddie snapped. Maria's hand flew to her mouth. "Thursday? But I just got the same notice." Jake's mind clicked. "Same landlord. Same date. We have the same owner," Maria whispered. "Mr. Dalton. He raised the lot rent again and I told him I can't." Eddie cut her off with a vicious jab of the gun in the air. "Don't say his name. He's the reason I'm here." Jake watched Eddie's pupils, huge and wild. He was circling the same thought over and over like a drain. "All right," Jake said. "I'll call. But you need to know one thing." He slowly reached for the corded phone, making sure his hands stayed visible. Eddie tracked the movement, sweat dripping from his chin. "What?" Eddie demanded. "My team out there?" Jake said. "They know me. They trust me. If I tell them you're trying to do the right thing, they'll bend over backward to keep you breathing. You give me anything, put the gun down for 1 second, let just one person go, I can work with that." Sirens warbled faintly as more units arrived. A helicopter thumped somewhere in the distance, its low rotor wash promising spotlights. Eddie licked his lips. "You swear you'll tell them I'm not just some psycho?" Jake picked up the receiver. "Give me something to work with and yeah, I will." Eddie hesitated, breathing hard. His arm trembled. "Fine," he said at last. "The kid goes. But if any of you try to leave with him, I start shooting. And you," he jabbed the gun at Jake. "You tell your people exactly what I say. Word for word." Jake nodded, holding the receiver to his ear as it began to ring through to dispatch. Outside, the armored truck's side door slammed open. And a figure in full tactical gear stepped down, visor reflecting the gas station lights, pausing as the radio crackled. "Be advised, hostage taker has SWAT officer inside." The figure froze, recognizing the name that followed, Officer Jake Mercer. Static hissed in Jake's ear, then a familiar voice came through, distorted but unmistakable. "Mercer? This is Captain Holloway. You want to tell me why I'm hearing your name on a hostage scene you never called in?" Jake almost smiled despite the gun on him. "Good to hear you too, Cap. Don't get cute. Status." Eddie thrust the barrel closer to Jake's ribs. "Remember what I said." Jake angled the receiver so the robber could hear both sides. "I'm inside with 3 hostages," he said. "Male suspect, 1 handgun, emotionally unstable but talking. He's agreed to release the teenage male as a gesture of good faith." Eddie jerked. "Don't tell them I'm unstable." Jake held his gaze. "Correction," he said into the phone. "He's desperate, not unstable. Big difference." There was a pause on the line. When Holloway spoke again, his tone had shifted, softer around the edges. "Copy that. Teenager can walk. We won't interfere." Eddie swallowed. "Kid, go," he growled, nudging the boy toward the door with his elbow but keeping the gun trained on Jake. The teen hesitated, eyes flicking between them all. "Go, son," Maria urged. "Run to the officers. Tell them we're still in here." The boy bolted, yanking the door open. A flood of blue and red washed over the tile as he stumbled into the night, hands up, immediately swallowed by officers who rushed him toward cover. The door swung shut again with a soft thump, cutting off the chaos outside. "See," Jake said. "You just did something they'll remember when this hits court." "This isn't going to court," Eddie muttered, but the edge in his voice dulled a fraction. Rusty shifted, crawling almost imperceptibly along the floor between two aisles, using the snack displays as cover. His tag jingled against his collar with the faintest of chimes. Eddie's head whipped around. "Dog. I told you to shut him up." Jake raised his free hand slightly. "Rusty down," he ordered. The mutt flattened, muscles taut. His eyes never left Eddie's hand. "Talk to me, Mercer," Holloway urged over the line. "What's your read?" Jake exhaled slowly. "He's not a shooter by nature," he said. "First-timer. No plan. Money motive tied to an eviction Thursday from a landlord named Dalton. He's also Maria's landlord." On the other end, Holloway swore under his breath. "Of course there's a slumlord. There's always a slumlord." Eddie's jaw clenched. "He's not just a landlord. He's a thief with a suit and tie. Takes government checks for repairs that never happen, doubles rent, then says we're the problem." Maria blinked. You got those letters too? The ones where he said the county already paid him to fix our lots." "Shut up." Eddie barked, but his hand shook harder. Jake's instincts flared. "Cap, you copy that?" he asked. "We might have some serious fraud in play here." "Yeah, we copy," Holloway said grimly. "But that's tomorrow's crime. Tonight, let's not add a murder." "Eddie," Jake said, dropping the cop tone and letting some of the man leak through. "You're not wrong about Dalton, okay? Guys like him push people till they crack. I've seen it." He saw it too well. The father on the floor, the crying kids, the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen table. A raid that started with a warrant and ended with a funeral. "I've messed this up before," Jake admitted, voice rougher. "I've been too late. I don't want to be too late again. Let me walk you out." "You can't fix this," Eddie whispered. "You showing up here, that's just one more cosmic joke." He backed toward the counter, gun still trained on Jake. "Hang up the phone." "Cap," Jake said quickly. "He's moving deeper into the store, still armed. Do not make entry. Repeat, do not." The line went dead as Eddie slammed the phone down. The connection snapped taut like a cut rope. Outside, the helicopter thumped closer, its rotors rattling the windows. A harsh white spotlight began searching the forecourt. Inside, Rusty's gaze tracked Eddie like a hunter, creeping inch by inch around the end of the aisle. Eddie suddenly spun, catching the movement out of the corner of his eye. "Dog. I swear to." He swung the gun toward the sound. And in that instant, for the first time all night, the muzzle pointed at something that wasn't human. "No!" Jake shouted, lunging forward without thinking. Eddie fired. The crack of the shot tore through the cramped store, detonating in Jake's skull. The odor of burnt powder seared his nose. Rusty yelped, metal shelves rattling as a coffee pot exploded in a spray of glass and steaming black rain. For a second no one moved. Rusty stood frozen, untouched, wide-eyed with his paws wet from spilled coffee. The bullet had missed him by inches, burying itself in the back wall. Eddie stared at the shattered machine, chest heaving. "See what you made me do?" he screamed. Jake forced air back into his lungs. "You just got a practice shot," he said hoarsely. "Next one might not miss. You want that on you?" Eddie's gaze flicked from Rusty to Maria, who was sobbing behind the plexiglass, hands clamped over her ears. The glint of raw horror in his eyes said that no, he didn't want that. "Not really." Rusty shook himself, coffee droplets flying from his fur. Then he did something that made Jake's heart both swell and lurch. He wagged his tail. Slowly, cautiously, the mutt inched closer, head low, ears slicked back, offering his soft brown eyes like a peace treaty. The same look he'd given Jake in the shelter pen, when every other dog barked and he just stared, asking silently not to be hit again. "What's he doing?" Eddie muttered, thrown. "He thinks you're hurt," Jake said. "He thinks loud people are in pain." Rusty crept closer, whining softly. He stopped just within reach of Eddie's outstretched arm. "Get away," Eddie warned, voice shaking. But his free hand hovered, almost involuntarily, an inch above Rusty's head. Outside, the helicopter spotlight swept across the front windows. In the harsh glare, the scene inside became a live stage. Suspect, hostages, dog, shattered machine. To the snipers lining up in the darkness, it looked like one man with a gun standing over a kneeling cop and a cowering clerk. "Eddie," Jake said carefully, "listen to me. Right now there are scoped rifles outside looking in. They see you point that gun at a dog? They're gonna decide you don't value life. Any life. You don't want that profile. Eddie's hand trembled. Slowly he lowered the barrel a few inches. Rusty took that as permission and leaned in, licking Eddie's fingers once. The masked robber flinched, then choked out a strangled sound. Might have been a laugh. It might have been a sob. Nobody's ever trusted me with anything good, he whispered. Not a dog. Not a house. Nothing. Rusty pressed closer, his body a warm, solid weight against Eddie's leg. Jake saw the tiniest unwinding in the man's posture, a slackening of a spring twisted too tight. Outside, the spotlight drifted away, replaced by the colder pulse of red and blue. Jake seized the moment. You can still change what they write about you, he said quietly. You can be the guy who broke or the guy who almost broke but stopped. Stopping won't pay her rent, Eddie muttered, nodding toward Maria. You're wrong about that, Jake said. Because if you walk out alive we go after Dalton. Art. Fraud, theft, whatever else we dig up. You help us, you're not just some robber. You're a witness. Eddie swallowed. You'd really go after him? Your rich buddy in the suit. He's not my buddy, Jake said a little too fast. Before Eddie could answer, a phone buzzed again. Not his. The sound came from the floor near the lottery stand, where the teen's phone had skittered earlier. Screen up. Live 23 viewers. Somehow in the chaos a streaming app had gone live. The tiny camera faced the counter, capturing Eddie, Maria, Jake and Rusty in jerky tilted frame. Oh my God, Maria whispered. People are watching this? Eddie stared at the screen. Comments were flying. Is this real? Call the cops. Poor lady crying face. That's the gas station by exit 14. And one that made Jake's gut clench. Is that slumlord Dalton's place? Figures. Eddie's eyes widened. They know him. Yeah, Jake said. Looks like your story isn't as invisible as you think. The door chimed again. Not from the back this time. Every head snapped toward the front as, beyond the glass, headlights swung into the lot and a glossy black pickup with custom rims rolled to a stop just outside the taped perimeter. A man in a tailored coat stepped out, arguing with a deputy, waving a set of keys. Through the window Maria recognized him instantly. Mr. Dalton, she breathed. And Eddie, seeing his landlord strolling onto the scene in a truck worth more than his mother's trailer, raised the gun again, this time with a fury that made Jake's skin crawl. Dalton's voice cut faintly through the glass, oily and annoyed. That's my property. You can't block my pumps without compensating me. Do you know who I donate to in this county? Sir, step back behind the line, a deputy snapped, planting a hand on Dalton's chest. Inside, Eddie's knuckles whitened around the grip. Look at him, he hissed. He's loving this. Probably already planning the insurance claim. Rusty's hackles rose, a low growl rumbling in his throat as he stared at the man outside. Eddie, Jake said quickly. Focus on me. You point that gun at the window, the snipers will take it as a green light. You don't want to die just to give that guy a new yacht. Eddie's eyes glittered behind the mask. Maybe I want him to watch. He grabbed Rusty by the collar, yanking him close, and shuffled toward the front counter, keeping the gun angled low but toward Jake. Get up, he ordered. Jake slowly rose from his half-kneel. His knees popped. 15 years of busting doors didn't leave joints kindly. You're coming with me, Eddie said. Cop shield. Dog in front. Grandma stays. Maria pressed a hand to the plexiglass. Please don't take him, she begged, eyes on Rusty. He's just a dog. Rusty looked back at Jake, ears trembling. It's okay, buddy, Jake said softly. Heel. The dog slid obediently to Jake's side, pressed against his thigh. Eddie nodded. Door, he barked. Jake moved toward the entrance, every step measured. Outside, officers tensed, weapons tracking the motion. The helicopter spotlight pinned the doorway in a harsh cone. As they reached the glass, Eddie yanked Jake closer, pressing the barrel snug under his ribs, hidden from outside view by Jake's body. Open it, Eddie whispered. Slow. Jake wrapped his fingers around the handle. This was it, transition space. Doorways were where things went to hell. In or out, everything was fragile. You're making a big tactical mistake, he murmured under his breath. Yeah. Eddie sneered. What's that? You're moving, Jake said. Movement is risk. The only way you survive that risk is if you trust me. Eddie's breath hitched against his back. You think you're in charge? I think, Jake said, that if you shoot me on this threshold they're going to fill your body with holes before you hit the pavement. You ready for that? Silence. Rusty's nose twitched at the cold air seeping around the doorframe. Here's the deal, Jake said quietly. You let Maria go. Right now. Send her out first. In exchange, I'll walk out with you and Rusty, and I'll keep my hands off you until we're at your car. No tricks. Maria gasped. No, you can't. Shoo, Jake said. You've got a grandson who needs you at baseball games. My mom's been gone 5 years. He still can have his. Emotion flickered across Eddie's face. You'd trade places with her? I already signed up for that when I put the badge on, Jake said. Outside, Holloway had moved closer to the taped line, headset on, eyes locked to the doorway. Jake could just make out the rigid lines of his shoulders. Eddie, Jake pressed. Decide. Either you let her go or this ends with everybody losing. Including your mom, who won't even have a son left to be mad at. Eddie cursed under his breath. Then, sharply, he jerked his head toward the counter. Fine. Lady out, he barked. Slow. Hands up. Maria hesitated only a heartbeat before edging through the narrow gap Jake made with the door, her palms raised. The cold hit her face like a slap. The spotlight swung, then tilted away as officers recognized she was unarmed. Walk to the tape, someone shouted. Keep your hands up. She shuffled forward, tears freezing on her cheeks, until a pair of gloved arms grabbed her gently and pulled her behind cover. Jake exhaled, tension leaking from his shoulders. One more living soul. One more chance to not repeat his worst night. Your turn, Eddie said. He dug the gun harder into Jake's ribs. We're going to my car. You're driving. Rusty rides up front. Any funny business and I shoot through you. You really think they're going to let you pull out of here? Jake asked. They won't shoot with you in the seat, Eddie said, but the bravado rang hollow. He motioned with the barrel. Move. Jake stepped fully into the doorway. The cold night swallowed him, the scene outside a washing blur of lights, guns, mouths moving commands. Behind him, Rusty squeezed through, pressed between his legs. A laser dot bloomed suddenly on Eddie's shoulder, a tiny red blossom trembling with the barrel's sway. Holloway's voice barked over the loudspeaker, Mercer, get down. But with Eddie glued to his back and Rusty at his knees, Jake realized something sickening. If he dropped now, the first bullet would punch straight through him, and the second would pass clean through Eddie into the dog. Hold your fire. Jake roared, louder than he'd ever shouted on any raid. Do not shoot. The command sliced through the chaos. For a heartbeat, everything paused. The red dot danced uncertainly, then winked out as the sniper lifted his finger off the trigger, swearing into his mic. Mercer, what the hell are you doing? Holloway hollered from behind a cruiser. Buying you time, Jake shot back. Eddie tightened his grip, dragging Jake a step toward the edge of the awning. Keep walking, he hissed. You just told them not to shoot. You're my insurance now. Rusty pressed closer, shoulders brushing Jake's calves, eyes flicking between men with guns and his handler's face. Over by the tape line, Dalton shoved past a deputy, puffed up with indignation. You're endangering my business and my tenants, he complained to Holloway. I demand you end this now. I have important people waiting on me. Holloway turned, rage barely leashed. Your tenant in there says you've been robbing him blind and kicking his sick mother out on the street. That ring a bell, Mr. Dalton? Dalton's face stiffened. That boy is a chronic complainer. You can't trust a word. Jake didn't plan it. The words just burst out, fueled by that same sick anger he'd felt staring at unpaid light bills in a dead man's kitchen. Hey Dalton, he shouted over his shoulder. Live streams rolling. Whole county's watching. What kind of community leader you are tonight. Dalton blinked, thrown. His gaze darted to the teen's phone, still peeking from under the counter inside, its tiny lens catching everything. Turn that off, he snapped. Eddie barked a bitter laugh. Too late for that, boss. Dalton's eyes found the masked man behind Jake. Something ugly slithered across his features. A quick calculation, years of manipulation clicking into defensive gear. Edward, he called, voice suddenly paternal. Put the gun down, son. You're confused. We can talk about your rent. You raised it 3 times in a year. Eddie shouted back. Said the county gave you money to fix the mold and you never did. Murmurs rippled through the ring of officers. A couple exchanged looks. Mold. County funds. Livestream. Dalton flushed. You signed the lease. You agreed to the terms. You knew. My mom's on oxygen. Eddie roared, voice cracking. You said if I kept quiet, you'd work with us. Then you sent the eviction notice anyway. Rusty growled, picking up the rising anger like smoke. Jake felt Eddie's arm tremble against his back. Under the mask, the man was coming apart, the raw wound finally exposed to air. "This is good," Jake said low. "Keep it out here. Words, not bullets." "Shut up," Eddie muttered, but there was less venom in it. Holloway seized the moment. "Edward," he called, using the name deliberately. "My investigators would love to hear everything you just said. On record. You help us nail Dalton, that makes a big difference when a judge looks at tonight." Dalton sputtered. You can't bargain with a criminal in front of me." "Watch me," Holloway snapped. Eddie's breathing hitched. "You're just saying that so I drop the gun." "I'm saying it," Holloway replied, "because my officer in front of you has been beating himself up for a year over a scene just like this, and I'm not losing him tonight. Or you. Or your mother. So help me out and give me something to work with." Jake stiffened. Holloway had never said it out loud like that. The failed raid had always been a ghost between them. Eddie shifted, confusion flaring. "What scene?" Jake swallowed. "Different house. Different night. Guy with too many bills and not enough options. I was on the stack when it went south. I still see his kids in my sleep." "You were the guy with the gun then?" Eddie said. "I was the guy who didn't get there fast enough," Jake corrected. For a long moment, the only sound was the helicopter and Rusty's panting. Then, slowly, Eddie's grip loosened a fraction. "I didn't want to hurt her," he muttered. "Maria. She always lets me slide on coffee when I'm short." "Then don't hurt anyone," Jake said. "End it here. Help us take down the man who actually put your mom in this spot." Dalton snorted. "This is absurd. Officer, I insist you remove that ungrateful." He never finished. Rusty's ears twitched. His gaze snapped to Dalton's hands. One of them had slipped into his coat, fingers closing around something metallic. "Gun!" Jake's brain screamed. Time went syrupy. Dalton's arm came up, a compact pistol glinting in his fist, aiming not at Eddie, but at Jake. "Move!" Holloway bellowed. But Jake was trapped against Eddie's chest, nowhere to go. Rusty barked, a sharp, furious sound. And then the dog launched forward like a missile, teeth bared, hurling his 40 pounds of mutt muscle at the rich man's gun hand. Rusty hit Dalton's wrist with a bone-crunching snap. The pistol jerked up as Dalton screamed, a wild shot cracking harmlessly into the night sky. Rusty hung on, growling, paws scrabbling against Dalton's tailored coat. Chaos erupted. "Gun! Gun! Gun!" Officers roared, weapons swinging toward the new threat. "Hold fire! Two guns, two guns!" Holloway yelled, forcing himself between muzzles and men, arms outstretched. Dalton staggered, trying to shake Rusty loose. The dog's jaws stayed clamped, his eyes bright with something fierce and almost relieved, like every time he'd been kicked or starved on the streets had found its answer in this one act. "Let go of the dog!" Jake shouted, twisting in Eddie's grip. For a split second, Eddie had a clear shot at Dalton. The man who'd milked the county, poisoned his mother with mold, and smiled through every broken promise. Jake saw the temptation flash in Eddie's posture. One squeeze and the rich man would drop. "Don't," Jake said, voice raw. "If you shoot him now, you're exactly what he calls you. A thug. Let the camera see who really tried to kill who." Eddie's finger tightened, then eased. "Rusty out." Jake barked, using every ounce of command in his chest. The dog obeyed. He let go and darted sideways, right as Holloway surged in, slamming Dalton's gun arm down and wrenching the pistol free. Officers swarmed, forcing the landlord to the ground as he shrieked about lawyers and rights. At the same instant, Jake felt Eddie's muzzle drift away from his ribs, tracking the tumble of bodies. "This is it." Jake spun, grabbing Eddie's wrist with one hand and the barrel with the other. For a heartbeat they wrestled, boots sliding on grit. Eddie was strong, but panic makes muscles stupid. Training makes them precise. Jake twisted, driving his thumb into a pressure point, shoving the gun skyward. His shoulder screamed, an old injury flaring. Rusty darted in, chomping down on Eddie's pant leg, yanking just enough to break his balance. The pistol flew from Eddie's hand, clattering across the concrete. An officer's boot came down on it a second later. Another pair of hands slammed into Eddie from behind, taking him to the ground. He didn't fight. He just lay there, panting as cuffs clicked around his wrists. Jake staggered back, chest heaving, ears ringing. For a moment he just stared at the scene. Dalton pinned under 3 deputies, face ground into the oil-stained pavement. Eddie curled on his side, mask askew, eyes wet. Maria huddled under a blanket by an ambulance, watching with shaking hands clutched at her throat. Rusty trotted back to Jake, tail wagging uncertainly, coffee damp fur sticking up in tufts. He dropped something at Jake's feet. Eddie's mask. The rubbery face stared up from the ground, empty and harmless. Holloway strode over, ripping off his helmet, sweat plastering his gray hair. "You always throw your retirement paperwork in the shredder like that?" he demanded. Jake huffed a laugh that turned into a cough. "Was thinking maybe I'd keep the paperwork on hold after tonight." Holloway's gaze softened. "You did good, Mercer. You all did." He ruffled Rusty's ears. "Especially you, hero." Maria limped over, EMTs hovering nearby. Is it over?" she asked. "For tonight," Jake said. She glanced at Eddie being lifted to his feet. "What'll happen to him?" "He'll be charged," Holloway said. "Armed robbery, kidnapping, a laundry list." "But," he looked at Jake. "We also have an on-record confession about Dalton's scams, witnesses, and about 100,000 views on whatever that stream was." One of the younger officers held up the teen's phone. "It's still going," he said. "Comments are blowing up. A reporter already clipped the part where Dalton pulled a gun." "Turn it off," Holloway said. "Then download it and get it to evidence." Maria swallowed. "You think they'll make him fix the park? Stop the evictions?" "I think," Holloway answered, "our deal likes cases where the bad guy wears a tie. And if she doesn't, I know a certain SWAT officer who won't shut up about it." Jake met Eddie's eyes as they led him past. "You told the truth when it counted," Jake said. "Remember that when your public defender shows up." Eddie nodded numbly. "Tell my mom, tell her I'm sorry." "You can tell her yourself," Jake replied. "I'll put in a word for visitation." Dalton was shoved into a separate cruiser, shouting about countersuits and defamation. Rusty watched him go, then snorted and turned away, unimpressed. Later, after statements and photographs and the long, slow unwinding of adrenaline, Jake sat on the back bumper of the rescue truck with Rusty's head in his lap. The gas station was a crime scene, but the pumps still glowed, stubborn little beacons against the dark highway. Maria approached, wrapped in a foil blanket, grandson's photo clutched in one hand. "They said the county's sending someone to review our leases," she said. "Some investigator. Said my notes and receipts might help other folks in the park." "Good," Jake said. "You've been doing detective work longer than we have." She smiled faintly, then scratched Rusty's chin. "If your boy here hadn't jumped that fancy man, I don't want to think how this ends." Jake looked down at the dog, at the pink tongue, the scar by his ear from some old alley fight. "Yeah," he said. "He's got a nose for trouble and a talent for biting the right people." Rusty thumped his tail as if proud. Maria's eyes grew shiny. "Sometimes I think the world only cares when folks like Dalton get a scratch. Tonight, you made me feel like maybe someone still cares when people like us get hurt first." Jake felt the old guilt stir, the missed saves, the empty chairs. But tonight there were no sheets over bodies. No kids crying over a still shape on the floor. "People like you," he said, "are exactly why I put the vest on in the morning. And why I adopted him instead of buying some purebred show dog." Rusty sneezed, insulted, and they both laughed. As the sky started to gray on the horizon, Jake glanced at the boarded-up bullet hole in the coffee station and the faint line of Rusty's muddy paw prints leading from danger to safety. Maybe, he thought, you don't fix a broken world in one night. But you can put one crack in the right wall. He stood, patting Rusty's side. "Come on, partner. Let's go write reports until our paws fall off." Rusty yawned, then trotted beside him, tail high. "And you, what would you do if you walked into a quiet gas station at night and realized someone ordinary was being pushed to the edge right in front of you?"